Henry Clay is one of the most important people in the history of the United States. To start off, he was the leader of the War Hawks. He wanted the U.S. to war with Great Britain in 1812 to stop the impressment of American sailors. Another of his significant contributions to the history of the United States is the American system. He advocated this on the Whig platform in the 1820s, 30s, and 40s. The American system was based on Hamiltonian economics. It provided that a national bank and large protective tariff be instituted. The revenue from the tariff and bank would be used to develop the infrastructure of the nation. Speaking of the Whig platform, Clay actually founded the Whig Party in the 1820s to oppose Andrew Jackson's Democrats. Their ideals were reminiscent of the Federalists. Another significant fact about Clay is that he held federal elected office for over 40 years. This contributed to perhaps his most significant contribution as the Great Compromiser. Despite his nickname, he was not involved in the Great Compromise. However, he did participate in some of the other more notable compromises in U.S. history. One is the Compromise of 1820, wherein Missouri was allowed as a slave state and Maine as a free state, and a line was established for where slavery would be allowed in the West and where the U.S. would soon expand. He also partook in the Compromise of 1833, where South Carolina was prevented from seceding. Finally, his most important contribution to the U.S. was the Compromise of 1850. This was a package of bills which diffused the pressure between free and slave states after the Mexican-American War. During the bill's passage in his speech on February 5, 1850, he famously said, "I have heard something said about allegiance to the South. I know no South, no North, no East, no West, to which I owe any allegiance." It would be foolish not to elect a Union man such as Henry Clay into the Hall of Fame.
Henry Clay was a great public servant. He held some federal office for over 40 years. He also helped the American system by providing great infrastructure improvements. Based on this, Henry Clay should definitely be in the Hall of Fame.
Most detestable president in the history of the United States. Soon after becoming president, in his speech to the Senate regarding North Carolina's state of Reconstruction, he said, "I feel incompetent to perform duties so important and responsible as those which have been so unexpectedly thrown upon me." Before he was appointed to run with Lincoln for the presidency in 1864, he was a Southern Democrat. This explains why he never listened to Lincoln's residual cabinet during his term. A president not listening to his cabinet is literally a concentration of a third of the federal government's power to one person. Andrew Johnson was a tyrant. He used his overextended power to allow the disenfranchisement of former slaves in the South. Contrary to Lincoln's plans for Reconstruction, Johnson granted amnesty to former Confederate leaders and allowed them to elect their own governments. This allowed the institution of poll taxes, literacy tests, and the grandfather clause. Plus, he gave his inaugural address drunk. His excuse was that he felt sick and decided to self-medicate with copious amounts of whiskey. If these haven't yet convinced you that he was a dishonest man, let's look at the elephant in the room. Or should I say, the fake elephant. He literally switched parties to become the vice president. He had no definite beliefs or morals. Finally, Andrew Johnson was impeached on 11 high crimes and misdemeanors. He had been vetoing acts of Congress incessantly, and they built a case on why that was unconstitutional. He was only one vote shy of being removed from office. The reason behind this was that removing a president from office without having him commit an actual crime would set a bad precedent for the stability of America's democracy. Inducting him to the Hall of Shame is what he deserves.
I believe Andrew Johnson should be inducted in the Hall of Shame because he was the first president in our history of our country to be impeached, and he allowed black codes in the South.